Hey, everybody. Welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Really, the last week's episode was after Thanksgiving, but I recorded it before Thanksgiving with John. If you guys haven't checked out that episode, please go back and check that out. Thanksgiving horror movies. John and I talk about four Thanksgiving horror movies of varying quality and different subjects that we enjoyed quite a bit, except for one. But it was still worth a watch and we had some fun with it. So, um, yeah, you can check that out. That was last week's episode. We are now in December. It's been a cold, wintry, blustery day here. So, hope everybody's staying warm and hope everybody's looking forward to the holiday season. And I know it gets dark early and that kind of sucks, but what can you do? So this week I'm talking more about Bigfoot. We haven't done Bigfoot in a couple of weeks. I think the last time I talked about it was my campfire chat with Josh when we were camping up in the Adirondacks. And tonight we're going to talk more about some Adirondack sort of adjacent Bigfoot reports. We're talking about Whitehall this week, which is very famous for Bigfoot sightings and was sort of put on the map by a very famous Bigfoot sighting by Brian Gosselin in Whitehall. And we talked to Brian on episode 100. It was our 100th episode, and Brian was kind enough to come on the show. Very good guy, very sincere, very sweet, very generous. Came on the show and told his story, even though he's probably told it a million times already. But he came on and shared it with us, and I had the pleasure of talking to Brian a few times off air, and he's just such a great guy. And if you've never heard his story, go back and check out episode 100. And he really goes into a lot of detail about it. It's a great story, but Whitehall is now like on the map for Bigfoot sightings in New York. You know, if you don't want to talk about Bigfoot sightings in New York or up in the Adirondacks, Whitehall is where it's at. And I'm pulling some stories again this week from the BFRO website. And it's funny because Washington County, where Whitehall is, has the most Bigfoot sightings of any of the counties of New York. So not really surprising, but Whitehall is sort of the Bigfoot mecca of New York. And this week I'm going to talk about four, maybe five stories. I'll see how much time we have tonight. And these are mainly sightings of creatures. And again, I'm trying to avoid wood knocks and howls because those can kind of go either way. They're interesting sometimes, but I'm trying to focus on sightings of actual creatures. So that's what we're going to be dealing with this week. So Bigfoot in Whitehall, near the Adirondacks, in the Adirondacks, coming up tonight. So let's get into our stories. So our first story comes to us from 2019, the summer, June 12th. This is, like I said, Washington County, north side of Whitehall. Nearest town is Whitehall. Nearest road is Main Street. And this looks like it was entered by someone else because it's talking like in the third person about the witness. So observed, the witness was walking his dog at 4 to 5 p.m. A tractor-trailer truck nearby turned on the corner around the truck and the creature stood up. Witness turned around and walked away quickly, glanced over his shoulder. The creature walked away smoothly. The dog, a beagle hound, did not notice the creature as the witness walked away. The witness was upwind, not a hurried stride, moved in a fluid motion. Witness and others, including Paul Bartholomew, who's a very famous researcher up there in Whitehall regarding Bigfoot and other paranormal phenomenon, so they found 12-inch footprints and a bedding area nearby in the following days. It had a 2-foot stride, which doesn't seem to be a lot, approximately 6+ feet tall, slender in appearance, maybe 200 pounds. And just to pause for a second, Brian Gosselin, when he had his Bigfoot encounter, he said the same thing. He said this thing looked like it had missed a few meals. It was kind of skinny, not the big, bulky, gorilla-like Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot that we tend to think of when we think of Bigfoot. He said it was very slender and slim, and that's what this person is seeing as well. Slender in appearance, maybe only 200 pounds. I mean, I weigh more than 200 pounds. The head had a pointed cone shape, no definitive forehead, dark brown in color. They did not see the face well. It did not have a neck. Broad shoulders, 1 yard wide. The chest was nondescript, so I guess no breasts is what they mean. Long arms ended near the knee, so very long arms. The arms only swung slightly. Saw dark, hairy hands, big, dark, hairy legs, nothing unusual. No genitalia noticed, no smell noticed. The beagle did not notice either. So these are interesting details. There's no smell, no genitalia. I mean, it's one of those things that you don't hear often in Bigfoot reports. And I think back in the day, in the 60s, the 70s, when Bigfoot was really kind of coming into its own, it wasn't something that was really discussed. And these days it is more. And people will ask, did you see any genitalia? Did you get a sense of, was this a male or was this a female? So this person is saying no genitalia noticed. The chest was nondescript, so I'm guessing no breasts, but they didn't see a peenie either. The creature headed toward the only route towards a forest. This is on the north side of Whitehall near Lake Champlain. Did not hear any noises. The witness is a hunter and knew it was not a bear. Several dumpsters from 2 restaurants and an apartment structure nearby. Also noticed a bedding area discovered by the girlfriend, several restaurant dumpsters nearby, floods after spring rains. And I've mentioned this before. We do get a lot of Bigfoot sightings near dumpsters, or they're rummaging through dumpsters. And this just kind of goes to show that human encroachment on wilderness areas. Not to say that Bigfoot actually exists and is rummaging through dumpsters, but if they do exist, a dumpster might be a good way for an easy meal. They come onto farms allegedly and steal chickens and other livestock. So why not go into a dumpster and grab, things that have been thrown away? So let's continue here. It was about 4:30. So it's like they said, between 4 and 5 p.m. Nice clear day, daylight, forest cover in the 70s in the afternoon. This is in the summer. This is not somebody wearing winter clothes, a big heavy coat and gloves, and just would be very weird. And this was a hunter. The witness was a hunter. They're going to know what a bear looks like. Bears are not going to be walking around like that, swinging their arms. So I tend to trust this person. The follow-up investigation is very short by BFRO investigator Mike Young. He says, I found the witness to be honest. He mentioned several features of a Bigfoot that few know. Bedding area and footprints confirmed at the location. So I like reports like this because there is that sort of other corroborating evidence. They're seeing something, but there's also footprints. There's also some bedding. I'm not too sure about the bedding. A lot of people, I think, go out in the woods and every little weird depression in the ground or tree structure, quote unquote, 2 trees can fall and just kind of form an X, and people like, oh, Bigfoot did that. It means stay out. And I don't buy into all that. But this person did see something, got a really good look. I mean, this is daytime. He's saying he saw it for, in enough detail where he could describe a pointed cone-shaped head, no forehead, dark brown color, didn't see the face too well. The interesting thing to me, though, is that the dog didn't notice it. Usually animals are very keen on that. So not sure what to make of that, but this does seem like a good sighting, something to look into. He's a hunter. He got a good look at it in the daytime. He saw hands, he saw legs. He's not embellishing the story by saying, oh, it smelled or it knocked on things. Just a really solid sighting here. Nothing too exorbitant, like they're not embellishing this story. So I like this one. What do you guys think he saw? Okay, story number 2. Married couple has possible daytime sighting while boating on Lake George. And this is from June of 2015. So another one from June. Location details: along the eastern shore of Lake George, north of the Narrows and south of Fox Island. The object we saw was located at approximately 43 degrees. So he gives a lot of detail here. And I'm going to try to skip over it a little bit because this is very precise. 43 degrees, 35.086 minutes north, and 073 degrees, 34.347 minutes west per a Google Earth view obtained on 5/5/2015. Nearest road is Shelving Rock Road. And like I said, he's going to be very detailed here, which I appreciate. Doesn't necessarily make for a good storytelling, but if you guys want to check out the coordinates, they're all in here. Observed. It occurred on a sunny June 17th, 2015, around mid-afternoon while we were boating along the eastern shore of Lake George, New York, just above the Narrows. The object we saw was located approximately 43 degrees and 73 degrees west per a Google Earth view obtained. We were about 140 yards away, even though it didn't seem that far, and the bearing from us to it was about 130 degrees true, again using Google Earth to obtain distance and bearing. This section of the lake is state property and the part of the Forever Wild section of the Adirondacks. There are many square miles of wilderness here, and this location is only about 8 miles from the locally famous Whitehall, New York sightings in 1976, which I'd mentioned earlier. Brian Gosselin, check out episode 100 of ours. They continue. We were motoring in our 19-foot IO boat northeastish in a narrow channel between Sarah Island, Hazel Island, and unnamed rocky outcrop and the mainland. Our intended goal was Fox Island, a short distance away. We were traveling about 5 miles per hour, slightly above idling speed. Engine RPM would be approximately 1,000. There's a point of land opposite the rocky outcrop, and as we cleared it, a small bay exists on our starboard right side. 5 miles per hour, slightly above idling speed. This is not a loud engine. I guess that's what he's trying to convey. Since I'm always scanning the lakeside for boat traffic, at that point in time, I was looking to the east into the bay, and I noticed movement close to the shoreline. It seemed that whatever it was caught by surprise as we cleared that point of land. I then got my wife's attention. She looked in that direction and also saw it. My view was of a very large black animate object that seemed to quickly raise an arm from its side to a horizontal position and then turn away and move back to the side, north, behind a nearby clump of coniferous trees. I then spun the boat around for a better view. Meanwhile, my wife Debbie was watching it. Her impression was that it was large, dark, upright, and didn't move like an animal. Her view was slightly restricted by the trees, but she did notice that the object was swaying from side to side, which we hear that a lot in Bigfoot sightings. People say these things just kind of sway as they watch you. Interesting detail. Small, but interesting. It was an observation of a very short duration, but long enough to impress us. Unfortunately, we can't provide any accurate dimensions or descriptions of physical details, but even though we were not sure what it was, we're sure of what it was not. So, again, 150 yards. They're in a boat. This thing's on land. They're not seeing lots of detail, like facial detail, but they're seeing a figure. He's saying they don't know what it was, but they know what it wasn't. So, not a bear, not a deer, not a person. We then continued on to Fox Island, which is about 200 yards from the sighted critter and only about 50 feet from the mainland, and chatted for a bit. Eventually, we got the charcoal grill fired up and proceeded to cook a traditional meal of hot dogs and beans, of course, with the appropriate condiments. We do this on a regular basis on the islands of the lake. As we were eating, we both had a weird feeling, so we quickly finished our meal, loaded the gear back on the boat, and left for as soon as some may say, got the heck out of Dodge. We've never had that type of experience on the lake before and are not sure if the two events are related. I've recently become aware that some folks have a theory about how our favorite mystery creature may use/communicate with infrasound, which could explain that feeling we both had. So that's another thing. You hear many times people will feel things, they'll get a sense of things. And there's just so many times where people will say, I felt like I was being watched, and then they see an alleged Bigfoot. So there definitely seems to be something hitting people instinctually. I don't know if it's infrasound. I don't know if it's just instinct. I don't know if it's just pure coincidence. This time it happened after the sighting, where a lot of times you hear it before the sighting, which for me is much more impactful and important. And I just think when it happens before the sighting, you can lay more credence to it. Whereas after the sighting, maybe they're just kind of spooked. So he continues, we returned to the area on July 6th, 2015 by boat with my brother, who's an accomplished photographer, to investigate the mainland. By then, the New York DEC had installed docks in that bay so we could tie up and go ashore. We went to the area where the critter was first observed and noted that there was a small, probably seasonal stream that flowed into the lake. We searched for, but did not find any tracks or other sign. However, I recently purchased a trail cam and plan to set it up in the area. Preliminary testing has shown that the motion sensor is very sensitive and wind-generated tree movement will trigger it. I've got a few ideas on how to mount it, but I'm still trying to come up with the appropriate bait. Also this spring, I shared our occurrence with Bigfoot researcher Bill Brand, who runs the Northern Sasquatch Research Society, who was present during a public screening of a documentary called Beast of Whitehall, the Abair Road Incident, that was made by the Ohio firm Small Town Monsters, which we've talked about on this show many, many times. Episodes 1 and 2 of this show actually talk to Seth Breedlove, who runs Small Town Monsters. He goes on to say, he then mentioned that he had a report of an anchored boat by Fox Island that had rocks thrown at it at night. It was probably the same bay, which is quite protected from boat traffic. Again, we both have had 40 years of outdoors experience and are very familiar with Adirondack wildlife. Debbie is a retired science teacher, and I'm a retired manufacturing engineer of medical devices. again, you have very smart people here. This is not what the skeptics would try to have you believe, that everybody who sees UFOs or Bigfoot are uneducated or drunk or on drugs or, just not intelligent people. You have hunters, you have science teachers, you have people who know what they're looking at. They know what a bear is, they know what a moose is, they know what a person looks like. They're seeing weird things, and that to me is just fascinating. Other witnesses, it was just him and his wife. We were slowly motoring in our boat, admiring the scenery. Other stories. Yes, according to Bill Brand, the local Bigfoot researcher, he was aware of an event where stones were thrown at a boat anchored in the small bay where we had our sighting. Also, about 8 miles away through the woods is the village of Whitehall, where there had been many sightings, again, Brian Gosselin, including the famous 1970s one, where numerous folks saw it, including law enforcement. Brian Gosselin was a police officer. So this was mid-afternoon. It was sunny and calm. So again, it's a daylight sighting. This isn't at night. This isn't just a howl. They saw a creature. It had arms. It raised an arm. A bear is not going to do that. And I don't know what that means. Is it trying to tell these things to go away? Is it, oh my God, I'm running away? Very interesting story. I like this one. It's very clear. Again, no embellishments. Not I saw the teeth and I saw the eyes. They saw a shape, but it was clearly not something they recognized. So very cool. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Steve Culls. And I've spoken to Steve a few times. I met him upstate one time, and I would like to have him on the show at some point. He's a good guy. Interesting points of view, and he does a real lot of debunking, so I like that. He says, I spoke with this witness, and both he and his wife have excellent ties to the community. What they described, the behaviors, and the location all fall within the scope of Sasquatch activity in this area, which has an extremely rich history. And it does, like I said, Whitehall. So I really like this story. A lot of detail here, except for on the creature. And I appreciate that. They're not trying to fill in any blanks. They know what this was or what this wasn't. So very interesting. Okay, so story number 3. Hikers find footprints and see a 10-foot tall creature outside of their home. This comes to us from January of 1989. Location details. This was in Whitehall on a friend's property near the Vermont state line, and observed. We saw footprints while walking in the woods that must have been 20 inches long and found some tree branches broken down. They were originally about 15 feet high. We decided to head back to his house right away because we both felt as if we were being watched and it was close to dark. So here again, you get that sense of being watched. Something's not right. You're finding these footprints, tree branches, 15 feet up. So a person walking through is not going to be able to reach that. So interesting. They continue. The entire way home, we felt as if we were being followed. Then the next morning, I awoke to see a large creature about 20 feet from the house. I slept on a fold-out couch, and the entire front of the house has windows. So kind of freaky, you're waking up and there's just all windows and looking out into the woods, and you see this creature. It must have been at least 10 feet tall, as the windows are 15 feet off the ground, and it was no more than 5 feet below me. So he's elevated in this house, and he's kind of looking down, I guess, at a creature, and the creature's only a little bit below him. It wandered around for a while, and I did not dare move. It was brown and looked very human except for its size and forehead, and obviously the hair. After about 5 minutes, it walked towards the house and up a bank. As it passed the house, it banged on the wall, and I thought its arm would come right through. My friend was awakened by this and came in, and I told him what I had seen. We decided not to go back out to follow the tracks. Also noticed just the feeling of being watched and followed. Other stories, I've since read of an incident involving a New York State trooper and a Whitehall police officer that occurred about 4 miles from my friend's house. Once again, Brian Gosselin's story. This was in January of 1989. We saw the tracks at about 3:30 on the first day, and I saw the Bigfoot the next morning at about 6:30. The tracks were seen in the woods about a mile from the house. I saw the Bigfoot in a clearing outside the front of the house that borders the woods. So this is interesting to me because once again, we hear these stories of like these creatures allegedly slapping the side of a house. And I don't know what that means. I don't know why they do it. But we hear it a lot. So that to me is an interesting detail that this thing kind of walks towards the house, 6:30 in the morning. Maybe it thought everybody was sleeping. It walks past the house and bangs on it. Is that an intimidation tactic? Is that it just trying to be tactile and touch it? And like, what is this? Really interesting. But again, you have this combination of factors. You have the footprints, you have the broken tree branches, which may or may not be connected, but the footprints definitely seem to be 20 inches long. That is a big footprint. And then the next morning, he sees this creature. And again, the feeling of being watched, the feeling of being followed. And there's no follow up here. I wish there were. I don't know if they were being paralleled. I don't know if they heard something. I don't know if it was just a feeling. Like when you're feeling you're being watched, you may not know where it's from, but you have that feeling. Same thing with being followed. Like, do you think it's behind you? Is it the side of you? So I don't know if that was paralleling, but an interesting story. Again, a sighting. There's other evidence. There's the footprints, the slapping of the house, which we hear in many other stories. So just, I do really like this story as well. Okay, so our final story this week. Man has a clear sighting of a bipedal primate on a clear winter night. So 2 stories from the summer, 2 from the winter. This is from January 15th of 1981, Washington County. Location details. This happened in an area known as East Bay. We had crossed the bridge there, which takes one from Whitehall, New York to Pulteney, Vermont. The sighting began in Pulteney, Vermont and ended in Whitehall. Here's an approximate latitude and longitude for where the sighting began. And they give those here: 43 degrees, 34 degrees, 13.94 minutes north, 73 degrees. It's all here. I don't know how to read these. So put the link in the description below so you guys can find this and get the exact location where these are being spoken about. Nearest road, East Bay Road, Scotia Road. Observed. Whitehall is a small town with little to do for teenagers. Driving all the back roads is one of the pastimes of choice. Late one night, a girlfriend and I drove out to East Bay and stopped to talk for a while. After a few moments spent parked near the bridge, I saw what looked to be a man walking across the marshy area to our left. The distance, I am assuming, was about 200 to 300 yards. This I gauged by seeing a fence line at that distance. At the time, my tested vision was 2010, documented. We both watched as this man approached the fence line. He cleared it without stopping, simply stepped over it as if it were a low stool. Knowing that the snow was not that deep or that hard to support a man of his apparent size, and that it was highly unlikely for anyone to be out on the marshes at that time of night, I stepped out of the car to get a better look. As soon as I had gotten out of the car, the man changed course and began heading straight toward us. Jeez. I closed the car door to cancel the interior light and prevent showing my location. At this point, the man broke into a run. His speed was incredible. He closed the distance between us very quickly. My girlfriend was screaming for me to get back into the car at this point. Creepy. I got back into the car, and she drove back over the bridge into New York State. As we went, I looked behind us and saw that we were being pursued, although we were building a gap. As soon as we returned to Hardtop Road, he broke off pursuit and ran back into the forest near the bridge. We returned to town and never spoke of this incident to anyone other than 2 trusted friends. I have since told friends and relatives that I saw something out there, but could not say that it was any animal I had ever seen, nor could it have been any man. I should add that at the time, I had spent 16 years working and playing outdoors. I had encountered all the major predators of our area, knew their habits and habitats. I know that I did not mistake an animal for a humanoid creature that night. I will further add that I am now a natural resource scientist with 16 years of experience studying and reporting information based on my observations and analysis. I still cannot state with precision what it is I saw that night. Also noticed nothing of note, just an extremely clear and cold night. Just him and his girlfriend. We were both sober, well rested, and in no way incapacitated. Other stories. This area has had a rash of reports from this place. All of them have been dismissed as kids crying wolf or what have you. However, when I was a child, there was a story of an attack on a group of teenagers. It was dismissed, as I recall, as anything but a Bigfoot attack. There are rumors, possibly untrue, of cows in the area being killed and partially eaten in the winter months. And I've heard that as well. I'm not going to say from where, but I've heard some weird stories from up there. Time and conditions. It was near midnight and the sky was very clear. The temperature was cold, perhaps 10 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was very still, no wind. There was a full moon and light was abundant. For a person with good night vision, driving without lights would have been possible. So a lot of light. Under those conditions, walking without a flashlight would have been entirely possible. So this is an interesting sighting. It's a moonlit night, lots of snow on the ground, and they see this dark figure coming at them and running at them. And a bear's not going to do that. And a person's not going to do that. A person's not going to be able to keep up with a car. I mean, I know they put some distance between themselves, but very interesting. So there's a follow-up investigation here by BFRO investigator John Perry. And he says the witness added the following information. The night sky was very clear and the moon was full or near full. In addition, there had been a recent ice storm which made the ground very reflective, making the surroundings readily visible without a light source. As a result, the animal was easy to see despite its initial distance from the witness. The animal's speed was described as rapid, although it did not look like it was running, but more of a cross-country skiing-like motion. It cleared the fence with barbed wire without breaking stride. Its motions were animal-like, not human-like. The witness noticed the arms were swinging. He estimated that the closest the animal got was 20 to 30 yards, and at that distance, he could clearly see that the animal towered over the bridge parapets. The bridge parapets were approximately 4 to 4.5 feet in height. Subsequently, the animal was estimated to be 10 to 12 feet in height. At this distance, he could also see that the eyes were blood red, similar to lawn reflectors, but he wasn't sure if it was the actual eye color or the reflection of his car's lights. We hear that so much. The eyes are amber or they're red or they're orange or, just really interesting. It should be noted that while the animal's height is certainly at the higher end of the reported height estimates, there are other reports in which the witnesses claim that the subject animals reached these heights. So yeah, 10 to 12 feet is a little bit high, especially for the East Coast. You hear that in Alaska and sometimes the Pacific Northwest and Canada, like the real sort of northwestern areas, they tend to be reported to be a little bigger, but East Coast here, you're talking 7, maybe 9 feet at the high end. So that's interesting. He continues, it is possible that the witness's position to the animal created an angle of view which resulted in an overestimation of its height, or that in his heightened state of emotion, he simply thought it was bigger than it really was. So I like that they're kind of allowing for human error here, that he's scared or just the angle at which they're seeing this creature distorted their perception, which often happens. However, the witness did have an excellent basis for height comparison and estimation based on the bridge parapets, and so it's possible that the animal was 10 foot or more in height. This region of New York has a long history of sightings, with at least one story dating back to colonial times, so that's pretty cool. Sightings in this region have been the subject of at least one book. Many books at this point, movies, podcasts. Whitehall is just a really active area, and I'll have to dig up that story from colonial times at some point because that sounds really interesting. But another one, again, anybody who's been out, especially on a snowy area on a moonlit night when it's clear and the moon is bright, that snow reflects the light, and it's not daytime, obviously, but you can still see things clearly. And if this big thing is stepping over a fence and running at you, and this is not a bear, this is not a deer, it's not a person, that is freaky. I mean, this is just a creepy, creepy story. It's winter, it's cold, it's dark. And this is, early 80s. So not even recent. It's not like they have cell phone in the car or, things like that. So just a very spooky, creepy story with this thing running at them. And like, what would it have done if it caught them? Just interesting things to think about. But I really do like this story. This one, it's a good one to end on. It's just creepy. And, I think these people did see something. Just really cool. All right, everybody, I'm going to end it there for this week. I'm not feeling super great tonight. I'm not sick, but I'm just, a little run down. This has been a crazy, crazy week for me. And I'm not feeling 100%, like 90%. But these were really cool stories. I hope you guys enjoy them. I liked all of these. Just very distinct sightings. Like there's no wiggle room here. It's not a tree knock or a howl or just a footprint in the snow. It's these people saw something. All 4 stories, there's sightings. And again, as I always say, and it bears repeating, either they're lying or they saw Bigfoot. There's really no mistaking any of these creatures as anything but Bigfoot or a fabrication of their imagination. And I don't think these people are lying. I mean, to give exact coordinates and to give all these details and to speak to follow-up investigators, what's the impetus for lying? It just doesn't ring true for me. So yeah, I think these people all saw a creature that is not supposed to exist. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving. In the meantime, question everything. Question these stories, even though they seem to be legit, even though they seem to be very clear as day that they saw Bigfoot. Question them. What else could it have been? If you guys have thoughts, let me know in the comments below. And check out our merch store. We have all sorts of hats and t-shirts and all that cool stuff. If you guys have a story you want to share, Jason at oddanduntold.com. Shoot me an email. I have some really cool stories I'm hoping to bring to you soon. People have been reaching out to me. People who have seen things in the Adirondacks and the Catskills. These have been some of our most popular episodes, and people who live in those areas are contacting me, and I'm trying to, arrange for them to either come on the show or to write out their story for me that I could read it on the show. But like I said, if you guys have stories or you just want to talk, shoot me an email. And until next time, everybody, rock and roll.